An incredible new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement called USMCA. It sort of just works. MCA.
Well, the NAFTA deal is done, or should we say the USMCA, sung to the tune of YMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. Now, there were some wins clearly. Keeping the dispute resolution mechanism in, that was key. Removing the threat of tariffs on the auto sector, probably the biggest one. But there are still tariffs on steel and aluminum. They remain for the time being. And Justin Trudeau did make some concessions on supply management. So, is it a great deal or just a great save, to quote the Canadian ambassador to the U.S., David McNaughton? To talk about that and lots more, we are joined now by the Finance Minister, Bill Morneau. Good to have you here, Minister.
It's great to be here.
And I'm glad you're still awake after lots of negotiation. Why is this deal better than the old NAFTA deal? What is better? What about this is better?
What we aspired to do, Evan, was to make sure that the business community, the people that want to invest in Canada, have the kind of stability and the confidence that they need to make investments. That's what's been achieved this week. It's a huge win based on where we've been at.
Some would argue that in all these negotiations, Trump actually won. He got concessions on dairy, right? He didn't have to give up patents on pharmaceuticals, so we still can't get cheaper generic drugs. We didn't get anything on steel and aluminum. So Donald Trump's noisy, belligerent style actually worked, and Canada lowered its expectations. We just wanted to maintain. We didn't want to win anything more. Is that a fair assessment?
What you should do is you should get business leaders sitting in this chair over the course of the next week and ask them whether we've come to a conclusion that enables us to continue successfully trading with the United States and Mexico. Because I've spent the week talking to business leaders, and what I'm hearing is unequivocal. They are extremely pleased with where we've gotten to. We have now the ability to continue with something that's been a positive. Our supply chains are integrated, as you know. That's created opportunities for great jobs. So you can look through the detail, find the positive things, because there are. At the end of the day, what we've done is for the vast majority of Canadians looking at how this is going to benefit them and their families, they can see that we've got a stable relationship.
Okay, but you keep going back to stability. I've also, outside of business leaders that you've spoken to, I've spoken to the head of the dairy farmers. They're extremely mad. They say we were chipped away in the deal with the European Union, chipped away with the Trans-Pacific Partner, now another, almost, they call it 4%. That they are paying for this. Now the taxpayers got to compensate them for billions of dollars. Okay, how much compensation will they get? Do you know?
Let's start by saying that we have an over $2 trillion economy, that we've now created the ability for people to continue to invest successfully. So when we look at issues like the one you're talking about, the dairy farmers, we've come to an agreement that we think is one that will present some challenges for some dairy farmers. So we've been pretty clear. We're going to take a look at how we can properly compensate them. That work's going on right now, and we'll come out with those numbers.
Do you know when? Like, it could be, it's billions of dollars we're talking about, right?
We have some time between now and when the deal will be ratified. So there's nobody who's going to be impacted in any way before it's ratified. What we're going to do is make sure we get that right, but people will be compensated in a way that's appropriate for the change.
Let's just quickly talk about steel and aluminum. Why could you not get a deal on steel and aluminum? The tariffs.
There were many things that we were trying to negotiate over the course of the last few months. We came down to a very intense period of negotiation over the last week. We didn't get steel and aluminum concluded. That's an ongoing discussion. It's not a discussion in any way closed. Myself, I'm optimistic that we'll get to a positive outcome there. We don't think that the Section 232 makes sense for Canada. It's something that I've spoken to my counterpart about. You probably heard in the press.
Just to be fair, steel and aluminum were part of the negotiation, and you had to ditch it in the room. Is that what's happening? You guys put it on the table. Let's get rid of those tariffs, and you had to ditch it because the Americans refused. That's what you're saying.
No, in the context of what we were trying to achieve, we got to everything that we needed to achieve for the new deal with the United States and Mexico. That discussion we just didn't finish. You might have heard in the press conference that the President of the United States had. He talked about an openness to getting that concluded. So we're continuing to work on that. That's something that we know is important for the sector and for the users of steel and aluminum.
Let's talk about sovereignty, what we gave up. One of the issues that has emerged is the fine print matters. And it is something called Section 32, Article 10, the non-market country. And what this section says is if Canada wants to do a free trade deal with something called a non-market country, obviously China is the one that everyone's talking about, then we have to we have to inform the U.S., and if we do it and they don't like it, then they could pull out of this whole post-NAFTA deal that we've just signed with them. Is that an admission that they have essentially the kill switch over a free trade deal with China? They have a big stick and we've given up sovereignty.
Well, let's step back and consider what happened here. We've got an ongoing agreement with the United States. We've, of course, got an agenda where we want to diversify trade, and that includes to places like China. The United States knows this. This is not new. We're just going to be practical in dealing with this. This is a reasonable.
What does that mean, though? But like your government said you want to do a deal with China. We want to diversify. The whole reason this deal was so important is we were too dependent on the U.S. Now the U.S. might say, look, you're still dependent on us. We hold the big stick to the next biggest trading partner that you guys have.
Yeah, so
how is that not an admission that we've given up sovereignty?
Evaluate what's changed. So before we did this agreement, they had the ability to leave NAFTA on 6 months' notice. Now that we've done the agreement, they have ability to leave NAFTA on 6 months' notice, or the new NAFTA. So what we're just saying is we're acknowledging that that's a reality, that we're always going to have to be playing well with our neighbors. Let me just evaluate.
Let me evaluate. Upon request, the party shall provide as much information as possible regarding the objectives of the negotiation. So we've got to give them transparent details about what we're doing with China, and then they have a big stick. That limits our ability.
Let me just explain it in simple terms. Okay. If I have a small business and my big client is TELUS, and I'm thinking about doing a big deal with Bell Canada, well, I'm probably going to say to TELUS before I decide to do a big deal with Bell Canada, are you good with this? That's just a practical reality. And this changes absolutely nothing. If you think that the United States...
Why was it included? I'm just trying to say, if it's so banal and so benign, why do most trade negotiators say, I've never seen anything like this? Why? And by the way, if you own that small business, why would you have any obligation to tell your biggest customer if you may sign another deal to diversify your business with a competitor? Why should they have a veto on that?
It may just be that you haven't been in business before, because I will tell you that every person who had a business would do exactly what I just said.
Well, so let me just with all due respect, I have, but also I don't know if the idea is I don't understand because I don't have your business background. Maybe that's true. But Jean Charest, he said he's never seen anything like this in a contract.
No.
So you're telling me that I'm reading this, but I just don't understand it.
Well, what I'm telling you is that before we did this new deal, the United States had the ability to leave within 6 months. So now that we've done the new deal, they have the ability to leave within 6 months. So I would ask you to tell me what the difference is.
Well, the difference is we have to show all the information about our deal with China to the United States. Let me just quickly ask you about Trans Mountain Pipeline. There is a story out there, and I just want you to get that in cabinet, sources have floated, according to Post Media, that there's an idea to gift the pipeline to Indigenous peoples or revenue share. Is that going on? Is there a consideration to gift the Trans Mountain Pipeline to Canada's Indigenous peoples and or a revenue share agreement? What's going on there?
Well, let me step back. What we've said from day one with the Trans Mountain Pipeline and the expansion is that we're going to pursue this on commercial terms. So that's the approach we're taking. I mean, right now we're actually not in the period where we're considering the sale of the pipeline or the expansion, because we're in the process of getting it done, as you know. When we get to that stage, we've been pretty straightforward. We'd like to move it back into the private sector. It would be, in my estimation, a good thing if Indigenous peoples were engaged in that process. But we've been pretty clear, it's going to be on a commercial basis. So that's our approach moving forward.
No gifting.
We're not even there yet. The idea is going to be very clear that we're going to create value, we think, by de-risking this project, and we're going to make sure that value accrues to Canadians, and that's the approach that we're going to take, and it's going to be on a commercial basis. So I don't know where you're getting your information, but that's our approach going forward.
We've got 10 seconds, but last time we spoke, you said we're going to hit the spring construction season. We missed it. Will we hit next spring construction season?
If we have 10 seconds, what I want to say is it's not only been the deal with the US and Mexico that was big this week. You haven't asked about LNG Canada. This is a huge, the single biggest private sector investment in our country. It's huge. And as we think about business confidence, having the new agreement with our North American partners, having a huge private sector investment, having a situation where we've drawn clarity around the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, and we're going to get through it in a timely way. These are big and important issues for our economy, and they help us to continue on a path that is positive for Canadians.
Fair point on LNG, but will you hit next spring construction season on Trans Mountain?
We are going to go through the process that we've laid out, do it right, and with that, we think we'll be able to get it done in a timely way.
Always great to have you here, Minister. Thanks.
Okay, great.